And welcome back to another heated rivalry recap, reactions, and deep dives. We're covering episode 4. I'm Jay. I'm here with my co-host Ness and our guest hosts Phil and Elena. And I guess we should just start out by celebrating that season 2 got announced because, yes. Round of applause. Round of applause. And then I also wanted to give a shout out to this past week. The Montreal Canadiens hosted their Pride Night. They did invite Francois Arnaud, Sophie Nelise.
I don't remember. I just know her from Yellow Jackets.
Both of them were invited on. Francois joined one of the broadcasters during one of their intermissions to talk about heated rivalry. They also did play the trailer during one of the commercial breaks during the game. Francois was also adding to his Instagram stories, and he posted this picture that is of the Canadiens and the Tampa Bay Lightning, and he's like, hockey, but with clothes on.
How odd.
What is this? Connor Story and Hudson Williams had gone out to High Tops in WeHo down in the LA area, and they surprised folks at the gay club, and it looked like a really good time. All right, we're going to dive right into the episode recap. We start the episode on a game between Boston and Montreal. Ilya scores 2 goals and Shane's on the ice. He taunts Shane that he's planning a hat trick before securing Boston's victory. The music starts playing as we go into a montage. Summer 2014, both are out running. Shane is with Hayden, Ilya is running alone, and we see text between them. Shane says, "Have a good summer." Ilya says, "Don't have too much fun." We see them at their respective gyms, and then Ilya's out drinking with Svetlana while Shane is in bed reading. We cut from Ilya throwing back shots to Shane fake drinking from a can for a commercial. Locker room, Ilya is checking the calendar for their games before texting Shane, "See you soon." Another game, Ilya checks Shane into the glass, smash cut between the two having sex, and more checks. Shane scores a goal, Ilya's watching, the two are having sour sex. We see Shane winning the cup on TV. The commentator says, "For the first time in 16 years, the Montreal Metros are hoisting the MLH Cup. What a feeling for Captain Shane Hollander," as Ilya watches alone with a soft smile on his face. Summer 2015, once again, we see them running while texting. Ilya says, "Have a boring summer." Shane says, "Enjoy friendly Russia." They work out. Ilya's partying with Svetlana again. Shane is back in his bed, but this time he texts Ilya, who is seen responding in the club. Shane is shooting another commercial. Cut between the Metros and the Raiders locker room as they both check their calendars. Shane says, feel like getting murdered in a dark, scary alley in Montreal in 2 weeks. They end up hooking up at Shane's place. Another shot of Shane winning the cup on TV. This time, Ilya is watching it, surrounded by people, while playfully shouting, "Oh no, it should have been me!" Blah! Shane texts Ilya while his team celebrates around him, popping bottles with champagne. Ilya says, "Lucky." Shane says, "The luckiest." With summer 2016, they're out running again. Shane says, "Don't work too hard this summer. I'm going to win again next year." Ilya says, "The only cup you'll have next year is the one I'll take off with my mouth." We see Ilya taking care of his father with a shot of Shane talking to his. And Ilya is texting at the gym and at the club while rejecting advances from a woman. Shane is texting back while at Hayden's family dinner and also in the middle of shooting a commercial. The Raiders in the Metro's locker room, we see Ilya is texting, "Ready to lose in 4 days." As the montage winds down, we can tell that things are getting more serious over the years, and they text more frequently and continue their hookups every time they meet. Even people around them are noticing how much time they are spending checking their phones.
I think the montage is so effective. The way that they've cut it up, it's across, multiple years, but we see that like progression of their relationship. At first, it's clearly just, carnal. They're hooking up, but you can see the text frequency is going up, and clearly, the people around them, I like, how you see how basically they're just, things are happening around them, but they're just so focused on each other and seeing each other and hooking up. And clearly, it's maybe running a bit deeper than their self-awareness is allowing them to realize.
It's also such a nice contrast to see how they live. It's completely different. Shane is in his quiet war, making commercials and working, and Ilya is taking care of his dad and partying like a beast in Moscow. And they are so different in their private lives. It's really nice to see.
Can I just say,
Please.
No, you may not. Absolutely not.
The way they use an entire hockey game as foreplay is insane.
Oh, yeah. That's.
Those.
I was like, whoa.
That editing, so good. Bless that
cuts,
editor.
Literal smash cuts, beautiful. No notes.
I particularly enjoyed those moments. Yeah, you can definitely tell like the way that they kind of started out that opening sequence. You can start seeing how their hockey and their personal lives are starting to blend together, but at the same time, they're just like they're not stopping to think about it necessarily. They're just like riding on the high and they're just going with it. And I guess we're gonna see a little later on in the episode where they finally like in contrast to episode 3 where we see with Scott and Kip, it's a little more like mature, it's a little slowed down, but at the same sense, like they still have their own bit of intensity that comes to a head versus this whole sequence has been going on for years and years and years, which at a certain point, I'm just like, I don't even know how, like, I can't even put myself in those shoes because there would have been a breaking point for me like 5 years ago. Like, the fact that they're just.
When are we going to talk about this? Nope.
It is like so long. Then we move on to Montreal in 2016. Shane is with Hayden with his kids at the aquarium. Shane is in disbelief finding out that Hayden's wife, Jackie, is pregnant again. Hayden is not impressed with the response. He says, you got to work on your lying. And be like, Hayden, what great news. Hayden, I'm so happy for you. Shane responds with, no, I mean, yeah, 4th kid. That's awesome, man. Really. Hayden inquires as to when Shane is going to join him in this nightmare. The nightmare being settling down and having a bunch of kids. Shane responds with, geez, you want to get me pregnant too? I don't think I'm ready. I think I still have some good hockey left in me. They discuss Shane's love life. Hayden asks about Shane's ex, Jessica. When they start getting more invasive, like Hayden suggests that Shane hooks up with Jackie's friend. They also have a reference for the ginger ale here, which we kind of see like is an ongoing point in like how people see Shane, like whenever he's asking for ginger ale, like the way that they kind of respond to it, the way that they sort of project. And I thought it was interesting, like how Hayden was like, oh, it's gonna like make Jackie make his wife happy if he helps her friend get introduced to like Shane, and maybe they get together and then now they can have like double dates or something like that. And Shane is like, oh, yeah, I got to make your wife happy too. And then it's like, yeah, so she can keep stocking, your ginger ale at home because clearly no one else is drinking it. And then so Hayden's girls are causing mayhem off screen, so he runs off, leaving Shane holding his baby, to which Shane says, "Tell your dad to leave me alone." Two girls then approach Shane asking for a photograph when Hayden returns, as they end up asking him to hold Shane's baby. Afterwards, Hayden complains about not getting recognized in the parking lot. So, first point to make is, we're going to see throughout this episode that people are starting to pick up that Shane is like not really saying things to them, and he's like really bad at lying. And if we go back to the first episode where he's having these first encounters with Ilya clocks him real quick that he's like, "Nope, you're lying. That's not what you mean. You want to go forward with us potentially hooking up in a hotel room." And then I kind of rolled my eyes with Hayden being like, "Ooh, when are you gonna like join me in this nightmare?" And I'm like, "Oh,
it's such a nightmare. Why are you there?"
Yeah. I love the girls. You hear them, but you never see them.
Yes,
like
yes,
the complete
please.
nightmare as a parent is you hear your kids going berserk somewhere and you don't know where they are. It's so effective for me. I really had flashbacks to, oh my God, where
See, I love that that's your takeaway, because my takeaway, and it's probably like, damaged from working in the industry, but I'm just like, yeah, that's cheaper. Like, you don't freaking
right.
help it. I'm just like, they've just cut around it and then they've just added some sounds in post. I love it. But it's funny though, because it is truly, I think it really conveys that feeling of like, he's not, coping.
No, not really.
No, right. That was my thought too. It was like, wow, they really didn't want to pay children to be in this episode. You just hear them laughing off screen.
It's probably the motive, but for me, it was really like, what the fuck are those kids? Why is no one taking care of them?
You were more concerned than he was.
Elena's having flashbacks.
Yeah.
Listen, as a childless person, I relate more to Shane in that moment of just like, tell your dad to stop. Like, this is not the life for me.
For sure. Yeah. I was definitely having like relatable moments like with Shane, because it's like such a hetero thing to be like, when are you getting married and having those kids? It's like, how about never, because I'm not going to carry them. But like, with Shane, I loved his response to be like, geez, you want to get me pregnant too?
It was so good.
Like, back off, dude.
But I do kind of love in this moment that like you see in, other aspects. I mean, for the most part, Shane seems comfortable in the locker room with, his teammates. And especially, we know that Hayden is his best friend, and like saying something like that where it's like, it's joking, but he feels comfortable to joke with Hayden that way. And,
yeah, absolutely. Like the fact that they can have that playfulness, right? That they're close enough that even, and we'll see that through the episode, right? That Shane is obviously lying, and he doesn't want to tell Hayden about, his encounters with Ilya and his sexuality, or his struggling with that. And I think that he doesn't quite, where he's at with that. But even throughout all of that, he's very honest about everything else. Like they seem to have a very open and sharing relationship in that way that, they can both give each other shit.
I also really like how he's offended because the girls don't know who he is. Because it's like a running gag in the books when Ilya says, Hayden, the 15th best player in the Metro.
Yeah. I was going to bring up the point about him like being so offended that no one recognized him.
Poor guy. He's just
play
average.
Better. Just kidding.
I want to know what line he's on. And I was telling Elena the other day that, clearly he must be doing something right. Like he's got a particular role because he's been there for how many years, even if no one recognizes him. Like he's probably like the fourth line anchor.
I think
He
he's one of
just
Shane's
has a
wingers.
particular role.
He's that locker
Like
room guy, you know?
consistent. Yeah, he's like the perfectly average, consistent guy that you don't want to trade, but not very exciting.
I don't know
Spoiler
if he's
alert,
one of the
Hayden's probably the mascot, the big reveal.
I think he's one of Shane's wingers, but I don't know if I remember right.
I don't know
I'm
if
not
I
sure.
see Hayden playing with Shane. If they don't recognize him, come on now, you know who's on our first line.
Yeah, you're right.
You know who's playing with Macklin Celebrini, and it is not Hayden. So we cut to Ilya watching TV. It's a celebrity house tour featuring Shane Hollander talking about his private lake house in Quebec. Svetlana asks if he wants to go out or watch whatever this is. Ilya pretends that he finds it so boring, he almost fell into a coma. Svetlana seems mildly convinced and asserts that Shane is fucking hot, at least. Ilya turns off the TV and we cut to them in the cab. Ilya is once again texting. Svetlana asks if Ilya has seen anyone, and when Ilya is dismissive, she inquires about Jane, who she has noticed him texting for years. I thought maybe it was serious or something. Ilya rejects the notion. He says it's not serious or anything. Hayden and Shane are unpacking in a hotel room. Shane says he's heading out to meet a friend. But when Hayden implies that he thinks Shane might be hooking up, Shane gets weird and defensive about it. Hayden says, so Lily's just a buddy? Shane says, what? And Hayden says, chill out. I know you text some girl named Lily. When Shane is left speechless, Hayden wraps up their conversation by saying he hopes Shane hooks up, as he's always plays better after. Clearly, Shane has not been as subtle as he thinks.
Neither is Ilya.
They think they're so smooth and so secret, but no.
It's like they're caught in their own world, right? They're not really paying attention to their actions, like outside of what they're doing. Like, I don't know if you guys have experienced that before. You're just so focused on this one person, like you forget about the outside world.
But they
don't.
100%. I don't know. I'm not sure about that because they meet once every, I don't know. It's just there's so much time that people start to notice, because when you know someone for a long time, you notice when they are lying and when something strange is happening to their phones. But they don't have a known world. They only have hookups in hotels and Ilya's place.
I also think that, for them, obviously, because they're both pretty mindful of being secretive about it. You can see that in the moment that, Hayden calls out, like, are you hooking up? Because he's, because Shane says, I'm going to see a friend. And Hayden's like, oh, a friend. And in theory, Shane could be like, fuck off. Like, what do you care? Like, if I'm hooking up or not? But he's so anxious of being caught out with Ilya that he becomes like hyper defensive and like, because he doesn't want those two worlds to accidentally meet, where someone makes a connection that like they're in the same, like he's like hyper vigilant about his fear of getting caught. But also at the same time, he's obviously falling for Ilya, and he's so like wrapped up in like continuing what they're doing that, you become a bit sloppy, right? Like he still wants to do it, so he's still going to do it. But, then become defensive when someone is putting two and two together, and he's like, no, it's not that. But then, like you say, Elena, it's also the fact that it's continuous. So obviously people are going to clock it. If they're a bit smarter about it, they could have just said, it's my secret girlfriend. But,
I asked if they could meet them.
He did put up on that. Yeah, he would have to invite her to dinner with Jackie.
I also want to point out that you see their interactions, especially between Ilya and Svetlana, like they're so close. That's essentially like his best friend, and is in his for a long time friends with benefits. So if you're sharing all this stuff to this person, and then once they're asked about something that they're trying to hide, they're very like short, and they get defensive when you start asking them. And clearly that's a sign that's like, you don't want to tell me about something. And then over the years, if I keep inquiring and you keep being short and dismissive with me when you're like open about everything else and you're chill with everything else, it starts, like, and essentially like living this lie for how many years that they're doing it, like, it's gonna look really awkward to everyone else who's interacting with you.
And isn't this also the moment where Svetlana says, Sasha says hi?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like in the car, and then
Ilya's just like doesn't care.
He shuts down. Well, he's like,
just like, why would I care about that?
What are you implying? Nothing is going on. I think it's interesting because it becomes so clear in that moment, I think, for both of them that these are two separate lives. They've got their lives with their friends and they've got their lives with each other. And they just, I guess for them right now, they can't see them ever intermingling for obvious reasons, And I think that's kind of, surely it has to be chafing on them. It has to be a bit difficult because you're having to lie to the people that you care about.
Yeah, and that's the craziest part about all of this, because I'm like I said, this would have been over like 5 years ago for me, because just the amount, like, especially with Shane, he's doing hockey, and then of course, he's got the fact that he's like the, this unique person, quote unquote, in the sport, like he's getting signed to all these deals, so then he's also busy doing all this promotion stuff, and I'm just thinking, like, with all that, and then now you're like trying to coordinate hooking up with Ilya, like it's exhausting to think about.
Yeah.
For
sure.
Shane arrives at Ilya's place. It's clear he's never been there. Ilya greets him shirtless, and they banter about Shane's interest in the house, with Ilya calling him Mr. Real Estate. Shane asks if they should talk, and Ilya says after. He lifts Shane up on the kitchen island, and we cut to the two having sex. Afterwards, Ilya initiates cuddles in bed while Shane says he should go, and Ilya asks for him to say. Shane appears surprised and hesitant. Shane starts to say that he's already told Hayden. Ilya cuts him off with, "Is Hayden your mother? Who cares what you told Hayden? Stay." Ilya convinces him to stay. They fall asleep. They're, cuddled up together. When they wake up, Ilya says he's hungry. Shane says for what? Ilya says for food, pervert. And hands Shane some of his clothes. In the kitchen, Ilya hands Shane a ginger ale and asks if he likes tuna melt. Shane seems surprised and charmed by this. Ilya is initiating a lot of conversation in the way that Shane often attempted to do early in their hookups. Ilya checks in to make sure that Shane's ginger ale is cold enough for him and tells him that the tuna melts will be ready soon. Shane continues to process this new approach from Ilya, as evident from his body language.
What a great moment.
It really illustrates a shift in their dynamic. It's just like Ilya's always been good during the sex at checking in and making sure that they're both on the same page. But he's always been like, there's been this antagonistic side to him, right? Like, and I think both of the guys kind of, they kind of get off on this sort of rivalry that they've got between them. And, the chirps, like Ilya brings the chirps into like their hookups as well. But you kind of notice in this scene that like, he's like genuinely, wanting to, like feed Shane and look after him. And I find it so endearing. It's like his
so
baby's
cute.
first steps at being, affectionate.
But this is the moment where the ginger ale comes in, right? Because there was the moment with Hayden where he was like making fun of him or whatever about it. There was a scene where Shane was with his parents and he tried to order ginger ale, but they didn't have it. And they're just trying to convince him to have wine instead. And he's like, no, I can't. Like, it's during the season, whatever. He gets defensive over it. And so, like, every time it comes up in this episode, it's like he can't have it, or it's like become a problem. And then at Ilya's, he has it readily available for him. He doesn't even have to ask for it. He just has it because he knows. So it's like, I don't know. His man knows him.
Yeah, so Ilya knows that that's Shane's drink, but I think it's in the book that it's pointed out that Shane like never told that to Ilya. Ilya just kind of like found this information out. So he's trying. So we're starting to see, you know, the shift. We know like earlier in the series, Shane is the one who's always wanting to like, let's not hop into the sex. Let's sit down and talk. And Ilya's like, no, this is a physical interaction. We're not doing the feelings. I just want to get off. And then like with each ending to the episode, it's like they have this conflict where it's like Shane's getting frustrated, Ilya's getting frustrated, and they're just like not on the same page. But then we see like the following episode, it's a new season, and they're like, okay, I'm over it, let's do it again. And then they have a conflict at the end, and then it's like they shift into this other gear in the relationship, but they always keep coming back to like, I still want what I can get out of this, and we'll figure out the rest later. And I think Shane is kind of, you know, at this point where it's like Shane reminds me a little bit of myself, where it's just like, I just want to know like what's going on so I can manage this other stuff in my life. And Ilya is more like, he's starting out with, well, my life has always been chaos, so I live in chaos. And that's just how things are. Even if it's not what he wants, it's like he's never had another option. So he's just riding at the seat of his pants. And Shane is just trying to figure out, how do I fit myself into your chaos while balancing this other stuff? And so now that like Ilya is making this shift, Shane's like, okay. But then at the same time, he's like, but what does this mean?
Yeah.
Like that's like at the end there where he's like, you know, checking in on like, you know, is your ginger ale, you know, the temperature that you wanted, and like, don't do anything. I'm getting the tuna melts ready. Like you can see that he's sort of like shifting his focus. Like he doesn't really know what to do. And he's just kind of holding his can because he's like, what do I do from here? But it's like, yeah, it's just like really evident in this moment that we're starting to see this shift from Ilya, who's been previously so closed off emotionally, didn't want to have the small talk, just wanted to get right down to the physical. So
if you go back in your mind, they have never been together more than 1 minute without talking. It's the first time they are talking with each other and doing something else apart from sex and hockey. So they're you can see Shane is completely weirded out. So what's happening here?
But don't forget that the last time we saw them was when Shane, you know, was in the elevator saying, you know, we didn't even kiss. In episode 2. And that, you know, that was like where he was emotionally in that moment. And then, you know, now we've had a couple of years, and, you know, they've kind of fallen into a routine. And I mean, there is kissing, but I think that he's sort of, you know, I guess in a way accepted that like that part of the, you know, relationship might not be what he's going to get out of it with Ilya. And then now that Ilya is kind of changing the tune and maybe wanting a bit more of that, I think it kind of throws Shane. And, you know, not to forget the fact that Shane is really struggling with his public persona. Like he's got, you know, like mentioned before, like he's got all these commercial deals. He's dealing with, you know, like being a minority in a sport that's predominantly, you know, very white. And so he, you know, has to represent all of that as well. And I think for him, especially like Ilya, you know, he's, you know, I'm sure that he worries about those things as well. But I think for Shane in particular, his image is so important. And he curates it, and he's, you know, he's running his schedules. He's a very regimented guy. So I think for him, this shift, like, it throws him because suddenly he needs to change gears in how he approaches their relationship. And I also don't necessarily know that he's ready to even consider them being able to have anything more romantic, or open or anything. Yeah.
I think also because in instances in their past where they've had a little bit of a moment, like how soon that door shuts. I think Shane's like, when's the door gonna shut? I don't want to like get caught in that door frame. And so he's just kind of like waiting it out, waiting for like what, like if I touch you, is that gonna like shut the door on me? Like I'm just waiting for you to give me the cues, and we'll go from there. So the scene switches to the living room where Ilya turns on a hockey game, and they engage in commentary about the fight that occurred on the ice involving Ryan Price, who is the protagonist for the book The Tough Guy. We learn that Ryan is known for fighting, and Shane mentions that he knows him from playing against him, but not wanting to fight him. They both are sitting on the same couch, but couldn't be further seated apart, both folding their arms across their chests. They continue to discuss Ryan Price. Shane recalls that Ilya played a season with Ryan, and Ilya informs Shane that Ryan isn't like what he appears. He's actually quiet, doesn't talk, keeps to himself. He's not a bad guy, doesn't make friends. Shane suggests that it's probably difficult because he gets traded every season. Ilya suggests that he probably wants to get traded again because Buffalo is terrible. Shane adds on to say that the team sucks too, which I kind of love that it's so canon that Buffalo sucks in this universe as well. Shane's joking around, which is signaling that he's loosening up to this new experience of sitting around and chilling with Ilya. Ilya says, and people say you're not funny. Shane, they do? Ilya, yeah, they say you're boring too. Shane says, who says that? Ilya says, me.
Ilya's so funny. I don't know what to make of his character yet.
So
again, I haven't read the books. I don't know if I will. I'm simply going off of the show, and his character is just like very hot and cold. Like you never know what you're gonna get from him. But when he shows his soft sides, it's like, oh, you do care. It's so cute.
He's an insight into his soft side, because throughout the series, the book series, Ilya's kind of like a Russian fairy, going through the characters and helping them here and there. And Ryan Price is one of the first characters that really opens to Ilya when he's close to the whole world around them. I love Ryan Price. I hope we get to see him in the next season 2. And for the rest of the league, he's just an enforcer. He's a brutal enforcer everyone is scared of. But Ilya knows him better. He's one of the few people who knows him better.
And when you think about it, like the fact that Ryan Price is that enforcer type, it's almost like, and then you find out, oh, he's not like that at all. Like that type of like, you're thinking, oh, he's like short tempered, or like, he's always out there to pick a fight. But then Ilya's saying like, no, he's not that at all. It's kind of sad to think about how, I've read stories or, seen similarities with like athletes who try and like lean so far into the like hyper masculization and the way that they try to build themselves into this character to like, so that way people will never suspect. It's like, if I go so far in this direction of who I am, you're never gonna find out that like, I'm queer or I'm trans or I'm not this person who would be able to like hang out in this group. And yeah, so just like them like learning about that and like them talking about it just makes me kind of sad to like think that, this very well happens in like the real world.
I mean, it does with all sorts of people, neurodivergent people as well. A lot of people talk about masking. And I think we all do, whatever our identities are. There are instances in our lives where we feel the need to mask or to sort of, have a different persona to protect ourselves. But like you say, Jay, it's like, it's so devastating to think that, some people find that they need to mask the majority of the time, and to pretend to be someone else just to kind of fit in society. Yeah.
The thing is, Ryan Price is actually pretty genuine. He's I think I remember he's out of his team. He's never been closeted, and he's been forced into this role because he's so big and so massive, and then he's just forced into this enforcer role. But he's completely different and not in a hidden way to his team. He's just a weirdo who sits alone in the plane and reads and things like that. But that's another book.
So they continue to engage in conversation, but are now more visibly relaxed. Shane is turned more towards Ilya, and arms are now uncrossed. Ilya has slid further down in his seat, half lying down, one arm behind his head, and the other hand casually down his pants. Shane asks Ilya, "What's your favorite city to play in on the road?" Ilya says New York because it's New York, and Florida because it has a lot of Boston fans. Shane says Ottawa because it's his hometown, and Ilya implies yet again that Shane is being boring. Shane mentions liking the hot places too, which piques Ilya's interest, but then Shane clarifies that he means hot weather. Neither of them says Montreal or Boston, but they clearly want to hear that. Shane mentions that he's glad that Toronto and Winnipeg have teams again, which also seems to align closely with the timeline of like the real Toronto and Winnipeg teams getting back into the playoffs. So, like actually having teams means like actually like being relevant again. Ilya mentions that LA is hot, as in it has hot women. Shane says there are hot women everywhere, but clearly it isn't so much his own opinion. Shane's body language changes as he turns his attention away from Ilya and back to the TV. Ilya talks about Svetlana. Shane clearly has no interest in this conversation and offers short responses and no follow-ups. Ilya mentions she likes Shane very much. Shane says, "Oh, that's nice," which he's clearly annoyed. Shane asks if she's his girlfriend. Ilya elaborates that she's a friend, but sometimes they hook up, but she's busy these days with a new business selling fancy cars. Shane says that it sounds perfect for Ilya, and Ilya agrees that it is close to that, but Shane pushes Ilya to continue. Ilya says it's nothing more than that for either of them, and that it's nice to have a regular woman like that around. Shane says, "You think she's the only woman in Boston who'd sleep with you?" Ilya suggests that he will find someone else. Shane is clearly processing this information and how it makes him feel. Ilya turns his attention directly to Shane and continues on to say, "But Shane knows him. He's lazy." Shane turns his attention back to Ilya, smiles a bit, and admits that he doesn't know that side of Ilya at all. They both stare warmly at each other before this moment is interrupted by the beeping coming from the kitchen to signal that the tuna melts are ready. Shane proceeds to get up, but Ilya says to stay seated, and he'll get them, and Shane brings his arms back together close to his body.
I find it really interesting, the progression of their, throughout the conversation, how one, the shot setup, obviously the composition, like you pointed out, Jay, that they're sitting so far away from each other in the beginning, you can really feel the physical distance. And then as they kind of warm up and get a bit more comfortable and familiar with this new dynamic, they sort of slowly, come closer to each other and open up and turn towards each other. But then you can see the places where they still don't quite line up. Both in sort of, just personality, right? Like Ilya, he's very casual with his hookups. He's not really worried about it. I think he's also very secure in his sexuality. Sure, he's not like open about it. But the people that know, they know, his closest friend knows. And so for him, discussing having hookups with people, that's kind of part of the course. But obviously for Shane, that's a whole other can of worms. He's just kind of, I feel like in this moment, opening up to the idea that Ilya might want, that he's kind of wanting a bit more intimacy. And suddenly he throws this curveball by going, "Oh yeah, hot women. What about you?" And I think Shane, I feel like there's a gay panic in that moment where he's just like, "Yeah, women, they're hot tits. Am I right?" It's just like this, you know, like moment of him sort of like, oh, Ilya thinks that, and everyone seems to think that I should like girls, and I don't know how to live in a world where I like don't at least pretend to, so I'm just gonna go along with this. And obviously, then Ilya kind of takes that as a okay, cool, we're having that conversation, and Shane is just so uncomfortable. My God, it's so painful to watch.
And it's like Ilya is fishing for information. He wants to know if Shane likes girl. It's like he doesn't dare to ask directly, and he's going through this, women are hot, and I have this friend, and but Shane doesn't give any information. He's locked down.
Yeah. He keeps it very close to his chest, and it's funny because they're both on like different fishing expeditions. You know, Shane is sort of like, "You like me?" Ilya's like, "Do you like me, but in a different way? Like, can I ask if you have other hookups?" And both of them are just like completely missing each other.
At this point, Shane is still fooling himself. He hasn't acknowledged to himself that he's gay. You know, he's still in this limbo where he's trying to pretend to like him.
Is this the moment where Shane says that when Ilya asks him that he likes to keep those things private?
I think it's coming up.
Yeah, it's coming up. Yeah.
Oh, okay, my bad. Jumped the gun.
Yeah. So so they eat while sitting next to each other. Ilya asks if Shane likes them. Shane says, yeah, probably assuming that Ilya is talking about the tuna melts. Ilya clarifies that he's talking about if Shane likes girls. Shane says, yes, of course, and clearly not believable, but he's just like, yeah, like Phil said, yeah, woo, tits. Shane says, he says, yes, of course. Ilya pushes further, and says that he doesn't see Shane with girls. Shane says it's private. He keeps a lot of things private, obviously. Shane says that Ilya says that he likes girls, and Shane says, yeah, no shit. Shane is irritated once again with the conversation, turning away from Ilya yet again. Ilya continues on to say, but I also like you. Shane turns back to Ilya to say, lucky me. This loosens the tension a bit. Ilya senses that and jokes at Shane. Not this person, of course. Shane says, of course not. I'm boring. Ilya says, but you have a good mouth. The moment is interrupted with a phone call from Ilya's dad. He excuses himself to another room to take the call, but gives Shane the remote. Shane sits in the moment and waits.
The romance. You have a good mouth.
Why do you have to ruin it? It was so cute.
But it's that back and forth, right? Like Ilya, he likes Shane and he wants to have,
he says it finally.
But he's also like, he's easier with sex than with intimacy. And so it's interesting because you're also seeing him struggle with that. And I think he's struggling with coming to terms with the fact that he might want more. And so his only mode of operation is like, do you have sex? Like for him, that's the like shortcut, like he doesn't, and he tries, he really tries. He goes, like, yeah, I hook up with women, but I choose you. And then of course, making the joke that he's lazy, like that whole implication that Shane is easy to get to, which is just patently not true because obviously they can only hook up ever so often. But, it's subterfuge. He doesn't want to really acknowledge it. And I feel like both of the boys in this moment are like hoping that the other will pick up on what they're putting out. And they are just not.
Boys.
Yeah, my feeling throughout this whole interaction is almost like they're both in a car. And then the moment that they're like getting closer, it takes a sharp left turn. It takes a sharp right. And the other one gets smacked into like the side of the door. And you get all disoriented again. And then they have to realign. And then the moment that they get almost to the same page, turn the other direction. So Ilya's dad is obviously getting worse. Ilya pays Alexei to be with his dad, but Alexei clearly doesn't care, which leaves Ilya clearly distressed. We also get a glimpse of Shane in the living room, clearly concerned with Ilya's situation and not paying attention at all to the TV. Ilya attempts to compose himself before returning to the living room. When Ilya returns to the living room, he attempts to carry on where they left off, and Shane asks how Ilya's father is, and Ilya's face goes from 50 shades of emotions. Ilya says, "You speak Russian now." Shane says he knows the word for father. This clearly makes Ilya happy, and Ilya reaches for Shane, and they lean back together on the couch for cuddles. Ilya turns down the volume on the TV and turns his attention to Shane, caressing and leaving a kiss on his head. And if you recall from the second episode, this is like in reverse. Shane is holding Ilya, kissing him, on the forehead, and Ilya's like, "Yep, that's enough of that. I'm leaving now." And now we get in the reverse, but Shane isn't leaving. Shane proceeds to run his hand across Ilya's leg and takes lead in their intimacy. Shane straddles Ilya and gets them both off. And yes, my power bottom Shane is here. I was rooting. I was like, yes, go power bottom Shane. The moment is so intense that they both say each other's first names at each other at the same time. For the first time, Ilya first, then Shane. Soon after, like literally seconds after, Shane panics and says he should go. He can't stay. Ilya is confused. Shane says there's a team meeting in the morning that he forgot. And Ilya knows this is a lie. This isn't like Shane to forget something like that. Ilya tries to pull Shane back in by calling him Hollander while holding out his open hand. Through Shane's panic, he says sorry, he can't do this, and leaves.
Dude,
this broke my heart.
Heartbreak. Oh my god.
When this whole sequence was happening, I was like legit in my room screaming, "No! Stop! No! Oh my god, no!" Even though I was telling like Elena and Fil, I was like, we know what's gonna happen. And still I'm like, no, stop! Stop!
What the fuck are you doing? Stay with your man.
He's holding out his hand, come back.
It's
such tender moments that you're waiting for, that you want to see happen, and they're happening, and you're like rooting for them, only for Shane to start panicking. And it's like, look, I get it, I understand why he does, but breathe a little bit. It's okay.
It's so interesting though that it's like Jay mentioned, it's the Shane takes control and steers them, and it's like Ilya lets go for the first time, like fully, and it's just in the moment. And I don't know that he forgets himself. I feel like it is kind of intentional. It's almost like he's reaching over and going like I'm going to say your name, so he says Shane, and then that kind of unlocks something in Shane where he's like, oh, like we are in this level of intimacy, and he says Ilya's name. But then it's like, like it clicks back into place, and he's like, I can't do this. Like, I can't have this relationship. I'm not ready for this kind of, level of intimacy. Like, what does this mean? And so he just like absolutely backpedals the hell out of the room. And it's devastating because you're like, this is what you both want.
Yeah, right.
It breaks my heart.
Dude, when I first heard Ilya say Shane's name, I literally gasped. I was like, "It happened!" Man,
I just wanted to Connor's story. See on his face everything what's going through Ilya's mind. It's just like, I don't know what he does, but he changes his whole body and keeps you there. I'm completely in awe of that man. I don't know how to say it, but he reminds me at times of Heath Ledger, and it's a bit overreach maybe, but in this he acts with his whole body and jaw and all his microexpressions.
No, because when he was sitting on that couch reaching for Shane, he was so sad. I wanted to hug him.
Yeah.
And can we talk about him when he does the sort of code switching and he goes back to calling him Hollander, and you can see like there's this twitch in his brow. He's like getting a bit, it's like the frustration of like he knows that he's gonna lose, like Shane is walking out the door and he's powerless to do anything about it, but so he has to restrain himself, and it's like he almost wants to just jump out and run after him, but he can't, and so he's just sitting there like seething at the, you know, like this frustration of like, I can't stop this. Why did this happen? Like we were having such a good moment, and now you're just
And I also feel like when he went back to Hollander, it was almost like, oh, we went too far. No, that's fine. We can go back. We
Yeah.
We don't need to.
Hollander.
We don't need to go at that. I'm fine with that. And then at that moment, it's like it's not even like good enough. Just like, no, we've gone too far. And Shane's already like in super panic mode. And then like I feel really sad for Ilya, because in that moment where Shane, you know, like he doesn't know what Ilya is saying on the phone, but he did say, you know, I do know the word for, you know, father. And he's clearly like, you know, when we go back to we had the scene with Ilya on the phone, and then we go back to where Shane is, like in previous scenes, it's like the TV is used as like, oh, I'm disengaged from this conversation, I'm just gonna like get distracted by the TV. But now he's like not even focused on anything but what's going on in the other room with Ilya. He's concerned, like, what is he talking about? What is going on with his dad? And then, you know, Ilya comes back and he just tries to like pick up where, you know, he left off, and, you know, separate the two, you know, Shane and then whatever the fuck is going on in Russia. But Shane's like, no, I want to know what's going on in Russia with your father. And you know, Ilya no longer has his mother with him. His brother is a piece of shit. All he has is Shane and hockey. And Shane is, you know, wants to be there for Ilya. And he's finally at a moment where he's like, I think I'm going to let you in now. Like, I will allow you to I want to allow myself to be vulnerable with you. And then we end up with them finally getting where they want to be with one another, and then realizing, holy fuck, I can't do that. The emotions are too intense. This was just a thing that we did every once in a while, and now I want so much more. But I think he's like racing through his head of being like, my hockey career's over. I'm going to have to come out. I'm going to lose all these deals. I have to come out to my parents. Like, he's got all this shit going through his head, and he's not even hearing Ilya anymore. He's just like, no. I need to get out of here.
And on Ilya's side, you know, he's sort of letting Shane in, you know, a little bit. And opening up and softening. And then, in that moment where he's vulnerable and says his name. And I love that you pointed out how, you know, in that sort of code switch of going back to Hollander, it's almost like he's trying to like say, you know, course correct and say, no, we don't have to move that quickly. We can just stay as fuck buddies. It's fine. But like, it's so clear that that's not what he wants. And so part of the frustration is just him kind of being like, I fucked up because I went there. And, you know, in Hollander, like Shane wasn't ready for that. And now I've totally screwed it. You know, in that moment when Shane's leaving, he's like, nothing I'm saying it's reaching him. Shane is out. Which, damn.
Yeah.
And then the other side of the court, I'm just like, you just got bro off, and then you're like bouncing. But it's also when you think back to like when they first started, like Ilya was the one doing that. It's like, I got you off, but I'm gonna leave now. So, I mean, they're not intentionally giving each other a piece of their own medicine, but you know, that is kind of like
it's an interesting mirror, or like.
Right.
You know, I mean, Shane is too much in his head in that moment. I don't even think You know, he's
they're not doing it intentionally.
Too long. No, he's like, Hayden's going to figure something out. My parents are going to figure something out. Maybe this is something I want. No, I can't do it. It's impossible. What's going Like, I think, like you say, all of these things are racing through his head. He's just like, I can't, like, and he he says as well, he says, I'm sorry, I can't do this. And I think you're right. I think it's dawning on him that he can't play the game. And I think it's also like, I don't know if you guys agree with me, but I also think that in that moment, I think he knows that he wants more, right? And I think he knows that he can't settle for just this casual thing, but he doesn't know how to make that fit in his life outside of, the hookups, number one. Number two, he just doesn't quite know where Ilya is if they're on the same page. And so like those two things happening at once, he's just like, nope, it's easier to just leave.
And number three, he would have to admit that he's gay or at least bisexual. Yeah. And he's not there yet. He's still struggling with the concept.
Which is so silly because like he's been hooking up with a guy for how long?
But he's also been hooking up with women. It's not on the book. He's hooking up with women too.
Okay, we're not seeing that in the
show. No, I think in the show it's only Jessica, right? That's mentioned as an ex.
Yeah.
I'm also kind of wondering if that's even a real person. Like when they were talking about it didn't, but you get what I'm saying? Like the way he talked about the ex, it didn't really, it was almost, I mean, maybe she exists,
that was
the
his
way
beard.
He was talking about it. Yeah, that's what made me kind of feel like you made up this character. I get it.
He's that self-aware.
My girlfriend from Canada.
I do think they exist, but they are not relevant for him. They never stay.
Exactly. To me, I mean, I almost read it as like, your high school hookup or whatever. Like it sounded like someone, because Hayden's the one that brings it up, right? He goes like, this girl, Jennifer, and then Shane corrects him and says Jessica. To me, that kind of feels like, maybe they went on a couple of dates early on in his career.
Yeah.
And yeah, sure, it was a beard, but not maybe intentionally. He was just trying to see if that was what he was interested in. And then he was like, nope. And so, basically they broke up. And I guess, because he does mention that she's seeing someone else now. And so, yeah, I don't think he went very far with her. Like, that's not the sense I get for sure. But I do think that he's, like compulsive heterosexuality or, like it's a strong feeling, right? That you sort of, well, that's the default. I should at least try. Yeah. And that's how he comes across to as me, like wanting desperately to be straight, making life a bit easier. He's already dealing with one minority status. Surely he can do without the other one, which is freaking garbage, right? No one should have to live like that. We should all be honest and genuine about who we are, but society.
So Shane meets with his parents for a meal, and the waiter comes by to inquire if they are expecting someone else before taking away the fourth setup of plates and utensils. Yuna asks Shane if he's made up his mind about Wimbledon because Rolex really wants him there, and she thinks they're worried their box is too Tennessee. Shane responds, does that mean too white? Shane, his parents look a little bit surprised, taken back, and Yuna presses on and says that they thought Shane liked the Rolex deal, the money, the great seats. He could meet a Swedish princess. Shane is very bothered of saying all his training is scheduled and he barely gets any time off. And with the time he does have, he doesn't want to spend it with someone he doesn't know and making small talk about something like Swedish politics. I was thinking about you in this moment, Phil. I'm like, what is it about Swedish politics? Is it really that boring? I remember when I came out to visit you and you guys wanted to talk all about American politics and started like bringing up the governor, and I'm like, please get me out of this conversation. The waiter returned.
Shane is not wrong.
Which makes me think that, yeah, your Swedish politics are, like, beyond boring. Yeah, we have, like, it's crazy out here now. The waiter returns to inquire if anyone would like a drink. His dad orders wine for the table, but Shane asks for ginger ale instead, which they don't have, so Shane opts for the sparkling water instead. Yuna suggests that surely one glass should be fine, and Shane insists that he can't have it during the season, which, I mean, we know that, like, Shane's got his routine, and, you know, so he's, like, very particular about, like, his regimen because, you know, so he can play well and blah, blah, blah. Whether that's, like, what he really wants to do or what he's, like, decided that he needs to do because he has all these other pillars he needs to hold up because, you know, he's, like, an Asian Canadian in a sea of white people, and he just needs to be holding himself to a higher standard, or if he's simply like deflecting the fact that like he just doesn't want to drink alcohol, but he doesn't want to like have that conversation. So Shane's dad David asks Shane if everything's okay, because he's obviously tense. Shane says he's fine. His parents press on and insist on Wimbledon and that they could spend time together doing things that Shane liked as a kid. Shane insists that they should go, especially since his dad is the tennis fan. Una clarifies that they won't send his parents the tickets because Shane is, you know, who they're expecting. And they're just the parents. Shane says that he'll just lie and pretend that he's sick. Una says, I don't want you to lie. That's not who you are. Shane takes pause before apologizing that he's in a weird mood. David asks if Shane wants to talk about anything, but Shane brings the conversation back to London before excusing himself to the washroom. His parents are clearly worried.
Don't lie, that's
the
not
lies,
who
the
you are.
lies.
But that's all he's doing. That's all he's doing. Just be like,
the irony of Yuna being like, you know, you're not the lying kind, and you know, I think that's such an experience, right? You know, when you're living that kind of double life, you know, you become a very good liar about specific things, and I think as a person, he's not prone to lying. He's you know, pretty honest and pretty regimented and pretty straightforward. But you know, there's this one big black hole for him in terms of where he can't be honest. And I think, you know, like there's a lot of subtleties, like a lot of layers to this scene as well. You know, it's the 4 plates that get removed, and then there's the conversation, and there's the implication of, you know, in a way, like checking in on him, like they're also kind of pressing a bit about relationships, or, you know, like what's going on. And I think it's such a perfect illustration of like how Shane feels so pressured, you know. It's both the public persona of who he is, you know, with the Rolex deals and the expectations and what his parents want from him. But then it's also him wanting to be honest about who he is with them, and also like having things be less complicated. And it's so sad that like he's trying to push back a bit and sort of say that that's not what I want to do. But then in the end, you know, the second the push gets a bit too hard, he then defaults back to like acquiescing. He's just like, well, okay, let's talk about Wimbledon. Let's do this, you know. And that's his cope. Like that's his cope. That's his way of getting around the awkward and difficult conversations, right? Is just saying, oh, no, let's not talk about that. Let's look at this thing instead, which is also a thing he doesn't want to do. But it's like, it's the easier of the two paths, you know, to tread.
I find interesting the change in the dynamics, because at the beginning it was Yuna, the mother, pressing him to work harder, to be better, and here the parents are actually asking him to relax, to go on a trip with them, and it's Shane who is going farther and harder and training and this and that.
He's throwing himself into the work.
Yeah, I feel really sad for Shane here because, you know, his parents are, you know, receptive to the fact that something is bothering him. And even though, like, you know, Elena had mentioned, like, in the beginning of the series, Yuna is kind of like, you know, getting this stuff done for Shane, signing these deals and everything. And I feel like, you know, perhaps early on, Shane's like, yeah, let's do that. Let's do this. And, you know, I think in a little bit of a sense, he, you know, is possibly excited about it, but like not to the point where, you know, that like she talks about, oh, I thought, you know, you like the deal, you know, it's like good money, you know, this and that, like all these perks that, you know, should be like exciting for like such a big star. But it's like, you know, later on we kind of get a little more information about just like Shane's love for the sport and how it kind of, you know, how he felt when he was younger. But I think even though Shane's parents are receptive that like something is bothering our son, I feel like he wants so bad to tell them, but he's got those other expectations that he's holding up. The fact that he is, you know, in a predominantly white sport and these deals are going to be great. But like, if he explains what's happening to them, like, he doesn't know what's going to happen, you know, if he like comes out and, you know, like, like he's not able to just think of himself. Like other aspects of his life like depend on him being this like amazing athlete, this perfect, you know, like Asian Canadian. And yeah, so I'm just really sad for Shane in this moment. And then, you know, of course I'm also sad for the parents because they want to know what's going on, like, you know, what is wrong with you? And he's like, no, I'm fine. Let's just talk about Wimbledon. Yeah, I'm just in a weird mood. Like, it's not anything. Like, I'll just be right back.
He just wants to please them. And all they want is for him to be with them, right? And be honest. And
happy.
And, you know, Yuna says as much, you know, she says, you know, you don't lie, but they can clearly tell that something's off. And I think that's like the devastation. It's the disconnect between them as well. You know, Shane is essentially pushing everyone in his life away. And, you know, is sort of left without a support network because he can't be open and honest to anyone, not fully. Like he shows different parts to different people. And I think that, you know, if we're going real meta, I also think the way that in this scene, you know, he asks for ginger ale. It's like that is his thing. That's what he wants. But then they say that they don't have that. And, you know, he gets a sparkling water instead. And I think, you know, for me, that's like, oh, the meta context of like him not getting, you know, he can't have what he wants. He can't, you know, he just has to kind of settle and he sort of accepts that.
Ilya,
yeah. Yeah. Ilya gets it.
Ilya has what he wants.
He could get the ginger ale, but then he'd have to deal with Ilya, and he can't handle that right now. So I guess he's not getting the ginger ale. This poor boy.
He just wanted a ginger ale.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to talk about the sponsor of this episode, which is DraftKings, the jaw-dropping moments that make hockey hockey. Experience all with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. Missouri listener, listen up. DraftKings Sportsbook is now live in the Show Me state. New customers, this one's for you. Bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN to turn $5 into $200 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, pass-through of per wager tax may apply in Illinois. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets, which expires in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer. Copyright NHL 2025. All rights reserved. After the meal, or perhaps another day, it's later in the evening and Shane is back in his apartment when he receives a call from JJ, who invites Shane to the party at a restaurant where the X Squad movie cast will be there. Shane heads to the Mile End. He meets with JJ before he heads over to the bar to get a ginger ale, which the waiter says they have, but Shane feels the judgment and changes up his order to a beer. The waiter flirts with Shane and says Shane Hollander can have whatever he wants. Lies, all lies. Shane,
but no ginger ale.
but I can't have the fucking ginger ale. Shane tries to pay, and the waiter signals that it's on the house. Shane insists that the waiter keep it for himself instead, but the waiter pushes back the money and says it's an honor. Shane is tipsy and walks to the restaurant and sits down in a booth to ground himself. He discovers that he's now sitting opposite of Rose Landry. Shane is a bit starstruck. Shane discovers that Rose is a hockey fan and a fan of his. They eat fries, they talk film, hockey, the conversation feels easy. Rose asks Shane to tell her about himself. He talks about playing hockey as a kid and just having fun before the scouts started showing up. Rose asks if it stopped being fun. Shane says he loves it, but when things started getting intense, he upped his intensity. Rose adds on that it must also be difficult to be the only Asian kid. Shane says that there was one other Asian kid, but the kid didn't like him. He mentions since he has a Western last name and the other kids kind of forgot to make fun of him. It's kind of the first time we see Shane having fun with friends outside of hockey. Rose and Shane are shown holding hands next to each other at the table.
Before we get into the discussion with Rose, I think I want to take a moment to focus on this bit where we talk about not the waiter, not yet. the Asian kid, the other Asian kid that he grew up playing hockey with, and how he brings attention to because he has a Western last name, he wasn't really bullied because we've seen that happen in hockey. You know, there's been players with last names that people can't pronounce, and it becomes a whole thing. Like, why can't you just learn the name? But Hollander rolls off the tongue or whatever. So I really like that they added this bit in there because it makes it more realistic for what hockey players or even fans experience or witness going on. So that's it.
No, I think that was really interesting to add a bit of context. And I think that it's also interesting in that it shows that obviously there are more, there are other people, at least in sort of amateur settings, right? But it gets harder and harder the further into professional field you go, because there are assumptions about what people can do. And so the pressure gets harder. And, I mean, the implication is obviously also that Hollander is, really good at what he does. But, it's lonely at the top, I guess.
Okay, let's go back to the waiter.
Oh, I was just like, man, was
you tried.
Yeah, and I kind of like that it's sort of it shows that moment of like the two doors that Shane can pick, right? Here's the complicated thing of like a dude picking me up, and then he's like, nope, and then he like falls into the lap of Rose Landry, and it's like the perfect beard.
Rose is like perfect for him, no? She can speak about hockey, she's funny. He's clearly starstruck.
She's a perfect match, right? If she wasn't a woman.
So we move on to, we see Ilya and his teammates in the Boston gym. Ilya's teammate, played by Harrison Brown, show Ilya the article about Rose and Shane. Ilya is clearly in disbelief. There's a photo montage of Shane and Rose then begins being played, showing them happy. Rose is at one of Shane's games, and the broadcast makes mention of her wearing Shane's jersey. People begin shipping them. The media is talking about them. And then another time back in the Boston gym, Ilya is watching the TV broadcasts on the news and decides to turn off the TV. But as he's getting off his stationary bike, he hits his foot and is furious.
It's so interesting how obviously for Shane, like meeting up with Rose Landry and having that connection and actually liking and enjoying spending time with her, that's like the easy out, right? Suddenly he's got the and I think he's probably attracted to her, as far as cool people go. And so that kind of just works out. And given that Ilya pushed, the last time they had a conversation, he was sort of pushing about like, well, are you interested in women? Like, I don't see you hooking up. It almost also becomes a thing where Shane is like, yeah, I do. Like,
look at me now.
Yeah, exactly. Whether intentional or not, he's like, well, now I'm in the tabloids with a woman on my arm, and then you can see that Ilya is clearly not coping with that. He's like, no, no, you can't do that.
Can't be. It's very
well, it
fun
kind of feels
because
like
just in the books we can see Shane's thinking, and the only sentence is he likes a girl with double. It's like, wow.
Oh my god! Yes, finally, I've done it.
He's thinking, wow.
He did it. I was gonna say, it almost reads off like an FU to Ilya, because the last conversation they had was obviously Ilya trying to find out if he liked girls or not, but also the comment that he made that he likes to keep those things private, and now all of a sudden he's in a very public relationship with this woman. It's like, of course, I'd be furious too.
Yep.
And I feel like, with their conversation, like when you find somebody who you could just like talk for hours with, like I think, Shane does feel like, oh man, like this is so easy. I can be out in public. Like I don't have to worry about anything. Like, yeah, let's try this out. But, as we start seeing, like she does seem like, oh yeah, it's like the perfect match for me. There are, not only does Shane, people who read the books will realize why he's not physically compatible with Rose, but we see other aspects in like their personalities that start to shift that also makes Shane feel like, okay, like perhaps this is not what I thought it was, like the honeymoon phase of like, oh man, look at this perfect person that I can be with, who's kind of like Ilya, where I wanted to like have that connection, but like I get to be out in public with this person instead.
We see through the intro to the chapter, like Ilya starts to stop hooking up with women. The first scene in Moscow is all these women around me. The second is this one, and the third one we see how he rejects a woman. So he is. I think the shock for him is I've stopped seeing women because of Shane. Maybe, I don't know. And then boom, here comes he on the news and everywhere with a woman. I don't know if that's something to do with it.
I mean, I think so to some degree. And I think that with Shane, it's so easy to conflate like romantic feelings with, feelings of adoration. You can have a good friend and the line between, sexual attraction and, whatever friendship attraction can be, quite a fine one. And so I think it's quite easy for him to, like Jerry points out, like fall into this, like, oh, I can actually spend time in public with this person, not having to worry about how people perceive it, because people perceive it the way, like the way they think I should be, that I should just be with women. And I actually like this woman. So like life's easy. This is the easier option than having to have these clandestine hookups with, the guy that I actually like, hidden away. Which, it looks pretty happy on the outside, but is it?
It was just some of the discourse I've been seeing online about Shane gravitating towards Rose, and I'm learning new terms. They call it queening out, right?
I read that too.
Where, he found someone that he can really relate to, and essentially what he found is a bestie, right? And he's like really excited that he can be out in public with her and stuff, like you're saying, Phil. But it's not, I don't think it's, again, I don't know the books. I don't think it's going to play out the way he wants it to.
Yeah, so with with Ilya and Shane, you know, how they started out was like a very physical relationship, and then they were trying to arrive at the place where it's like, now we talk about our feelings and we actually get to know each other. So Shane is starting out where he gets to do the feelings and do the conversations, and then going in reverse of his experience with like connecting with somebody and developing romantic feelings. So he's at the stage where he's like, oh, I know this part. This is the part that I wanted with Ilya that I can't have. So back in Montreal, 2 weeks later, Montreal and Boston are playing each other, and Shane checks his phone in the locker room to see a text from Rose. She'll be missing the game because she's stuck at a shoot, but invites Shane out later to meet up with her and Miles. After texting with Rose, Shane scrolls his text message, clearly hoping to see a text from Ilya, but Ilya hasn't texted him. During the game, Ilya is checking into Shane, but makes no attempt to look over at him from across the benches. The game ends 1-0. The broadcasters are unimpressed with both teams' performances and questions where both of their star players were tonight on the ice. Ilya is in his hotel bathroom looking at his reflection, and he's livid. He says, fuck this shit, and insists that he needs to get laid. Connors, who is his roommate, asks where. Ilya insists that they find a club and for Connors to tell people. Shane meets up with Rose and Miles in the club. Shane orders a beer. Rose wants to dance with Shane, even though she said in a text that she wouldn't make him. Shane clearly doesn't want to, saying that he's beat, but Rose insists, so he does. Ilya is at the same club at the bar. He sees Miles across the bar and soon realizes that Shane is probably also there. He turns and starts looking for Shane in the crowd. Ilya sees Shane and Rose dancing. Shane notices the Boston players and starts looking around for Ilya as Miles comes over to sandwich him with Rose. He spots him through the crowd, dancing and making out with a woman. The music changes in this moment, and Shane excuses himself to go to the bathroom. Shane walks over and gets into Ilya's line of sight. Shane and Ilya are locked in on each other as if no one else is around. The scene cuts to Shane and Rose going back to the apartment and getting intimate, and Shane is clearly not in the moment. Ilya is back in his hotel, jerking off in the shower. Shane is clearly on his mind, and the scenes swap back and forth between Shane and Ilya.
This was hard for me to watch because of all of the flashing lights.
Oh, yeah. I thought it was. I thought the ending was very effective, though. With the like, we go on these close-ups of both of their faces. You know, you can see that Shane is having sex with Rose, but as we close in on his face, he's looking somewhere else, and they're both looking straight into the camera. And as we cut between them, it's like they're looking at each other, and they're both clearly thinking of each other. Wow, what a way to end the episode.
Mm-hmm. Well, it started with Ilya first. Frustrating. With Ilya in the shower first, right? And I'm like, why are you looking at me like that? Why am I here? Why am I involved?
In that moment, I was thinking, like, yeah, I'm frustrated for you too. Mm-hmm. I would probably be in the shower as well, being like, I hate this.
And starting with when he's looking himself in the mirror and says, fuck this shit. That's you can see.
Yeah.
He can't take it anymore.
Right. And I have a question. The scene with Rose and Miles where they're sandwiching Shane. Why is Miles kissing up on Shane's neck, and why is Shane allowing it?
He's gorgeous. That's why.
No, right, but they're in public, right? And Shane is not a public person. And I feel like that goes against everything.
But he's with Rose, though, so it's okay.
It's a club among friends. You can never know what happens there.
Fair.
True. But also, he doesn't look completely comfortable. And he does excuse himself. But to be fair, I also think that his mind is somewhere else. He's just like, hello.
What happened? What's happening?
Yeah.
But also funny how Rose, like Miles is clearly flirting with Shane, and Rose is just like, yeah, it's my hot boyfriend and his
show business.
My boyfriend's boyfriend.
Right, the scene where they're at the bar and Miles, I feel like Miles was giving Ilya some mojitos at some point, right? He was flirting.
There was
How did
some
he
contact.
how did he clock him?
I'm not sure. Or maybe just saying hello because he recognizes him.
I mean, yes, but I felt like there was some eye action there. He was certainly, I mean, you know what? I feel like Miles, the way that he's presented in the show, like he seems pretty open and comfortable with his sexuality. Yeah, like he sees a hot guy. Ilya's a hot guy. He's just like, I'm going to send some eyes. And Ilya doesn't, outright reject him. He sort of doesn't look too sure about it. But, what I find interesting, though, is that Ilya sees Miles and immediately clocks that Shane will be there. So I'm like, he's been paying attention. Boy has been looking at the tabloids and
change of expression.
He's been obsessed.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, surely that's what we're meant to think, right?
The music's so good in this show, and that last song was like perfect.
I think
I have my feelings about it.
Yeah, I know that Elena has feelings about it, and I want to say that it is interesting, and I think that I don't know how many fans that are listening to or watching this that know of the Norwegian show Skam, but it was famous a few years ago for doing a similar scene with two men dancing across the dance floor, looking at each other, and clearly mentally hooking up, and they used the song Robin with Call Your Girlfriend. And it's a similar effect, right? Because it's about the implied, there's an emotional infidelity going on. With this one, they used the song, All the Things She Said by Tattoo, which, like they were huge in, was it the 90s? I can't remember when this song came out.
2002.
Early 2000, early 2000s, I want to say. They blew up, like especially in Europe, they were huge. Yeah. And also a lot of it was this kind of homoeroticism, like the sort of the lesbian, the quote unquote queer bait of like the two women. They often made out during their concerts.
Yeah.
And so I think like there's certainly a bit of a queer gaze in like, and in the song as well, like the lyrics. But I think, and Elena, I'll let you expand a bit on this, but it was quite controversial.
I don't know if it's necessary to do it now, but it was all a montage. It was all their manager forced them to do that. It was. We have talked so much about queer baiting these last weeks, and this was queer baiting at its finest. And it was such a disappointment because when they came out, it was like, oh, look at that lesbian from Russia openly singing about it, and this, and it was all fake. I think the girls are indeed queer, but it was a lie. And then much later on, one of them made some incredibly offensive, homophobic comments about gay men, and he then ran for office with Putin's party. And I hate that they chose this song. It's perfect for the scene. Cinematographic is amazing, but I can't avoid feeling betrayed by
the added context.
It was, which is betrayal and disappointed. And I've been seeing so many comments and so many, it's perfect, it's so, and do you know your history? Do you know what happened? It's like these girls, they sang at the inaugural ceremony in Sochi. They were the official band to sing at Sochi, while queer people and queer bands were being oppressed and incarcerated and forbidden to talk. I don't think I'm going to do any friends with this, but...
I mean, I think that it sort of illustrates, I mean, they were a massive, and I guess they still are a massive export from Russia. But what I think, ironically is, I think maybe some of our listeners know about Hudson and Story getting the tattoo that says sex sells, but I think that's kind of what it is, right? It's like sex sells. Like they Tattoo really sold themselves on that, you know, like it was titillation. It was sort of the male gaze of like two women hooking up on stage. But you know, I feel like we're sort of veering a bit off topic in terms of the show. But I think it's interesting added context. Like I found it really sort of, I'm with you, Elena. I was a bit conflicted about the inclusion. I think it was fitting and it's a bop. And I also liked they had a different version of it at the end, right? It changed stuff.
That was amazing. That was amazing.
Yeah.
It's just
right. But that's the thing, like some people might not know the history, right? Because I didn't until my girlfriend pointed it out to me and showed me. I was like, why would they pick that song? Why wouldn't they like do their research and pick such a controversial like queer baiting band or group or whatever? It's such a good song. That's so annoying.
Yeah, it's so annoying. I have had that song in my head for the last 3 days, and I just can't get it out of my brain.
It's an earworm.
Pirate it. Don't give them royalties.
And they are now number 1 in the charts on Spotify. They are getting money from this. And that makes me so sad. One of them is okay. I think one of them is completely okay, and she came out as bisexual, and she's a supporter and everything. But why are we giving that woman money?
I feel you, Elena. But also, man, what a scene though! Like
amazing.
The shot and the composition, the way that we see them catch each other's eyes, and the way that Shane, you know, walks into and it is. I forget who you said it before, but they're in their bubble, right? They're back in their bubble. It's just the two of them, and they're just looking across the dance floor, and it's like everything else melts away, which is why I think it's so interesting, because then we get we jump to Shane having sex with Rose and Ilya getting off on his own. But like, I don't know, throughout that entire transition, it's like you're in their heads, like in both of those guys' heads. They're just with each other. And I think they did that so effectively. So, you know, kudos for that, at least. The cinematography, top notch.
I want to reiterate that Rose is great. There's so much in common with Shane, but I hated that she made him go out there and dance. It's like, you know, it's one thing if it's like Shane's a little shy. Maybe he just feels like he's going to be awkward out there, but maybe you give him a little boost and then he finds out that he likes it. But I just sense in this moment, especially because she said in the text that she wouldn't make him go out there and dance. And it's like telling Shane, like, oh, you're listening to me. Like, you know what I like and don't like, and you won't push me like other people in my life who are making me, you know, do things that I don't want to do. Like, and so I just got irritated with that part. And then the fact that he goes and he's like, oh, let me get a beer. And it's like, oh, it's not you, Shane. You don't want a beer. And I'm just like so frustrated in this moment because I'm just like, this is not you, Shane. Like,
and he's obviously so conflicted when they are at Rose's place. And she goes up the stairs and takes off her dress, and he is just he can't cope with the situation.
He knows what's expected, though, and I think that's the thing, right?
At the beginning of the episode, there's a short glimpse of Ilya and Shane kissing as they go up the stairs at some place, and you can see here he doesn't want to.
He's not going up the stairs like he did with Ilya. He's
not going up the stairs. No.
He's not running up the stairs to go do it.
Yeah.
He's with Ilya. They're kissing. He's such a actively consenting, actually participating, you know, partner. And then you get the contrast where Rose is, you know, like she's inviting him to participate and to be, you know, a partner to him or to her, but he, you know, it's kind of rote. He does it because it's expected, and I feel like for me the beer thing, and the dance thing. It's the same thing. It's all throughout this scene. Shane is just going along with emotion. You know, he is doing what he now feels is expected. Because he has somehow closed the door on his double life. Ilya obviously didn't text him after the game or during the game or anywhere. They've both had like this bit of falling out, and I think they're both kind of waiting for the other shooter, or like for the other person to sort of extend something. But neither of them is quite. They don't quite know how to reach back out. And so you get this thing where, devastatingly, Shane is now actively, trying to fit a mold that he doesn't himself feel like. He's ordering his beers. He's begrudgingly, allowing his girlfriend to make him dance. And then when she invites him home and wants him to have sex with her, he goes along. And that's really tragic. And oh my God, this show just keeps leaving us on like the worst.
Yeah.
Just like, I love it. I mean, I'm a glutton for punishment, so I'm just like, yes, next time suffering. But man, can these boys catch a break? I guess we'll see you next week.
There's a trend with the show, right, where it starts off with hot and heavy stuff. Then it's like some cutesy stuff in the middle with some hot and heavy stuff, and then it ends with like tragedy. What's happening? Let me have something good. I want a happy ending.
Shane's definitely just performing in this moment. He's performing in like, look, I have everything, right? This is what I was supposed to do, but he's unhappy, and it is so depressing to see. So now we're gonna move over to one of our deep dive topics. Phil, if you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about the intimacy coordination.
Sure. So obviously with this show in particular, there's quite a lot of sex scenes and quite a lot of intimacy. And so I thought it was interesting to maybe highlight one role that's sort of come up in the film industry in recent years and gained more prominence. And it's called intimacy coordination. And for Heated Rivalry, their intimacy coordinator's name is Chala Hunter. She is, she's an actress herself, who's dealt with quite a few intimacy scenes. And she trained with intimacy coordinators and directors international to become an intimacy coordinator. I don't know how widespread knowledge is around what intimacy coordinators do. I don't know. Do you guys, are you somewhat familiar with that type of work?
I mean, I've heard about it in some of the shows that I've followed over the recent years, but I don't really know too much beyond that. I mean, obviously, it's like, I think if I were in their shoes, it would be helpful to have someone there to kind of, because it's not like in your personal life how you engage with somebody for like intimacy, like the fact that you're going into a job and you're gonna perform like simulated sex scenes, and you have to be, very, very like comfortable with your scene partner. I've heard stuff like, the intimacy coordinator also handles like having them have discussions about boundaries and then how the scene is going to be played out. And, so I have just like a general idea, but not anything like terribly in depth.
Yeah. I think that's sort of, I see you shaking your head, Ness. I take you're not very familiar?
Not really, no. I've heard of like people using intimacy coordinators and stuff, but I don't really know what goes into that, so.
Yeah. So I'll just expand a bit on that. So I want to start out by quoting the actors a bit, actually, because I think that kind of illustrates some of what goes into it. Because I think that for us, and I mean, that's kind of the intention, right? When you're watching a sex scene, it looks spontaneous. It looks, like in the moment and intimate. But actually, a lot of that work is really scripted. And I think in particular for Heated Rivalry, I've read a lot of articles and seen interviews with Jacob Tierney where he speaks about this at length. So Story said in an interview that the fans get spontaneity, but we see mechanics. We see technique, rehearsal. Actually, sorry, that was Williams who said that. We see Chala, the intimacy coordinator, going knee a little higher, knee a little lower, hide your like little ballet slipper. And then Story said that he didn't feel like those moments were overly sexual or raunchy to him because he's the one in the scene. And I think that kind of illustrates the way that a lot of intimacy is approached in film. Basically, it's all about blocking, right? Because you've got cameras close up on you, and you need to make sure that they use intimacy garments, for example, to cover their privates. They can also be used effectively to make sure that the actors are comfortable around each other, so that you don't have, someone else's private parts in your face. And so a lot of that then boils down to them. Essentially, an intimacy coordinator then becomes a bit of a choreographer who controls and helps the actors know how to block the scene. In an interview with, I want to say it's Elle, Shyla mentioned how, which I think is really cool, Jacob Tierney had really laid out the sex scenes in the script. So, and I think he said in interviews as well that right off the bat, when they were interviewing actors for the part, he wanted to be really open with them about the level of intimacy that they expected from the performers, because he didn't want anyone auditioning and then sort of finding out later in the process. And I think this speaks to his own experience as an actor as well as director. I think that, if you're put in a position where you have to act out these kind of intimate scenes, you become quite aware of the level of vulnerability that you have to display on scene. And it's really important that, essentially consent is paramount in these situations. And another thing that a lot of intimacy coordinators use is something called a rider, which is basically a contract that I think has to be signed 48 hours before the shoot, which essentially outlines all the things that are going to be performed so that the actor doesn't get any huge surprises. Things that might change on the day is more sort of around how the lights are, or where certain setups are, but they basically know what kind of sex they're simulating. I also want to quote Shyla. I thought she said something really lovely. She said, in regards to Heated Rivalry, she said the scenes are written with very specifically as they are in the book, and Jacob really laid out the action in the script, portraying queer joy and queer sex and not insinuating or implying it on screen is rare. Celebrating queer sex, queer joy, and queer love, it isn't really portrayed that much in media. The sex is such a big part of the emotional, the physical, and psychological journey that these characters go through. It's a true human experience. And I think that, when it comes to intimacy performance, currently, or sort of in recent years, there's been a bit of a discussion as to whether intimacy coordinators, that it's a bit of an overblown title. Do we need it? Some directors opt not to use it. But I think that they serve such an important role. In my own sort of anecdotal experience, I directed a short film where we had some intimate moments. It wasn't anything huge that I was asking from the performers. It was some physical stuff, touches and a kiss. That was essentially it. But in that moment, I kind of, it was about supporting both the performers and myself as a director, because sometimes you can feel a bit awkward when you're standing there directing someone going, can you do a bit more, and you don't quite know, you don't necessarily have the language, just because you're a director doesn't mean that you have that kind of language to describe to performers what to do. And so I actually employed a intimacy coordinator that helped. And one of the lovely things that my actors mentioned afterwards. Because as part of that process, they actually stepped away and they spent some time with the intimacy coordinator working out their relationship and how they were going to interact with each other. And they sort of afterwards, they said that gave them a bit of freedom to offer things and feel confident in knowing that the other actor would be there with them. But also it removed the pressure of the director being in the room, kind of scrutinizing them, going, what's happening. They could just kind of be with themselves. And I know that in reading some of what Chala said, she mentioned that she basically in any intimacy coordination, she always goes in with the performer and they have private conversations that don't go beyond sort of that room, so that she knows where their level of comfort is, and so that she can support them on set, which I think is really beautiful. And I think it's really helpful, speaking from a director's point of view. Some directors are a bit reticent to utilize them, but I think that for me, it made it so much easier because I knew that there was someone there that could pull the brakes if need to, but also someone who could support me because they knew what I wanted to get out of the scene. And I imagine that it's very similar with Heated Rivalry. A lot of, there's been a lot of jokes, I think, from both fans and the cast about like how both of the actors are so comfortable together. And I mean, they're best friends, right? And they have such strong chemistry. But I think it's easy to sometimes forget that there's, it's at the end of the day for them, that's work. And so to know that, even though they're comfortable together, they know that they're nailing things and they know that they're doing what's being asked of them right. I think must be such a reassurance. And I know I've seen in interviews that they've mentioned that, she became a good friend in helping them through that. Yeah. So that's a bit about intimacy coordination.
It's such an interesting process because it's not, as someone who just watches this kind of things, I don't work in the industry like you do. It's not something that I really think about. Like you hear it mentioned here and there. I never thought about it as it being coordinated for it to look natural, like that's interesting to me because I would love to learn more about that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm glad. I want to also maybe wrap up on some quotes from the two actors because I think that they kind of illustrate at least how I personally feel like it's really nailed in the show. So it starts with William saying that even though we had to get good blocking and choreography and the technical stuff down, after that, we talked about the who, the what, the where, and the when, asking ourselves, what does this mean for the story? And then that almost needs to be reminded because you can get up in your head about the technical aspects. And I think Chala was a good reminder of, okay, you still need to sell this, which I think is beautiful because I think that really translates in the show. And then let's see. And then Jacob continues with, these sex scenes were also very scripted and very specific to the page. I know as an actor, the last thing I want to be told is go at it. It's not fun for either party. Also, sex is a language in this show to tell a story. So everything was very specific. Everything was choreographed much like a dance. So Chala was her choreographer in a way. Once you learn the steps, then you're free to express yourself. So you don't have to be thinking, what am I supposed to do next? Where are my hands supposed to go? And I think like literally, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I think that Heated Rivalry has really nailed the way that like intimacy can become a language within itself. And really, I mean, we've talked about it today, how, you see how the two guys are, meeting in different places and wanting different things from each other. So I have to applaud both cast and crew on a job well done on that aspect.
They've been doing a great job. Everyone's loving it,
Yeah. And I also, I love that it sort of proves that that level of sex, and queer sex is, can serve a deeper purpose. It's not frivolous. It's about telling a story. And in this particular story, sex is pivotal. So that's cool as well. I think there's space for those kinds of stories as well.
Yeah, I think it's a good reminder too, because obviously sex sells. People are interested because of that. You know, this show is showing a lot of it. But it's a nice reminder that it's a part of the storytelling. They're not just doing it to do it. You know, it's adding to, you know, these characters' processes of dealing with their queerness and stuff. So good stuff.
For sure.
And not to necessarily end on a negative note in regards to the beauty of how the sex scenes are set up, but folks who are listening are probably going to be noticed in the last couple of days that there was a bit of gay on gay violence in regards to another show that's got like queer folks in it, and someone who apparently is an openly, you know, gay actor within that show was saying some stuff that was basically trying to say that they're not performing like actual like gay sex, like it's not. And it just frustrates me when I see something like that and it's not necessary. It's like we've talked in so much length in previous episodes about the beauty of it just not being for like the wow factor of like, oh, they really went there, they're really showing us like they're wanting to go for the explicit factor or something. It's like when I see like the scenes, like I'm thinking about, oh my god, this is like queer sex. There's consent. I love that they're talking to each other. Isn't just like we're just seeing like two men or two women or, you know, non-binary folks like go at it just for the wow factor. Like this, you know, the plot is within these scenes for these two particular characters. So it's really frustrating to see that something so beautiful was taken a stab at, only for the actor to come back this morning and look like he was trying to pedal back for probably like his image, because he himself, you know, how many people saw that and how many jobs may he not potentially get as a result of it, only because he has something bad to say about a show that. And then, you know, Francois Arnaud came out and being like, is there one type of way to have gay sex, you know, like you know. And so anyways, sorry, not to
maybe he's just doing it wrong.
No, I think
no, I'm just kidding.
Well, I mean, no, I think, Jay, I think it's good that you mentioned that, because I think that in a similar vein to a lot of directors sort of being a bit anti-intimacy coordinators, here's an example of a queer, you know, performer having issues with the way that queer sex is being portrayed. And I mean, listen, I think that there's space for all sorts of criticism and discussion. Like, I mean, that's kind of what we're doing, right? We're bringing all different points of views about what we like and don't like about the show. But I think that the way that that's being levied, and sort of also in this way of insinuating that like they're doing something wrong, instead of talking about like the artistic, you know, expression, I think that the idea that Jacob Tierney, an out gay, you know, director, hasn't put a lot of consideration and thought into the way that he wants these scenes to be portrayed. And I mean, clearly, you know, he got two actors that were very willing to go that extra mile to sell it and to nail a performance in terms of the intimacy, right? I think it's really easy to take those kinds of pot shots for performers when they're feeling frustrated because like something they're not involved with is, you know, getting all of the limelight. And I think it's unfortunate. I think it's good that he walked it back, whether that's, you know, a genuine statement from his point of view or just a PR move. Who's to say? I mean, I'm not going to speculate. But I think it's unfortunate. It totally is. And I think that, you know, it's about that, you know, I think as queer creators, at least I feel like I want to continually uplift fellow queer creators and celebrate those wins, you know, because this is a massive win. Like, sure, there's been a lot of intimacy on TV, but, you know, like you mentioned, Jay, a lot of it has been quite frivolous and quite, you know, like it's been very gratuitous. And so for me, like, I'm really excited to see this level of intimacy from a queer couple on a massive show that is exploding. I mean, you know, it just got its season 2 renewal, and it's making, you know, it's, I think they said Crave #1 of all time show, you know, like premiere show.
Their viewership
so
increased by 400%.
Yeah.
Like it's doing
so
really well.
you know, like whatever some naysayers are saying, you know, we're winning. I want
Right.
you know, I want more queer stuff on TV. So if he wants to do
Right.
some stuff, he can do that, and I'll watch that as well. But
Right. But
we
it's
can
like,
have more. There's
why?
space for more.
Why are you gonna tear something down when we have slim
Yeah.
pickings out here? You know, like
Well,
there's not a lot of
exactly.
queer representation in media. What are you doing?
Yeah. It's a shame. It's a shame.
Any sort of discourse of like being in seeing Connor and Hudson out and like how close they are. I'm like, okay, whatever you think is happening there in terms of like you hoping that they're queer or not, I think in like the most generalist of perspectives, like if I had to go and make a film or a TV show with someone to that level of like intimacy, yeah, I'd be all over them too in public because you have to get like so fucking close to them. Like how are
Yeah.
you not that close after doing all that stuff? So anyways, I want to move
And
on.
I also think that that's yes, absolutely. I just want to end it by celebrating Connor and Hudson and their performances,
Definitely.
because I think that the two of them, like their friendship and their authenticity, you know, in performance is just like it shines through. And I think that I'm so like I don't know them, you know, so this you know, whatever, who cares what I think, but I'm just like I'm so proud of them. I'm so pleased to see that they are staying true to themselves and being, you know, their freaky selves and just like having fun and not feeling pressured, you know. When they're doing this entire PR circus, I imagine how stressful that is. And you know, we saw it a bit with them visiting the gay bar as well. You know, I know that there was like a clip of them outside and then the clip when they went inside. And, you know, they were sort of nervously like, oh my God, is anyone even going to recognize us? And then they just get this overwhelming celebration as they come in. And I can only imagine what level of like, you know, wow, that must be for them. But they just seem so like happy and genuine and they're enjoying it. And I'm like, they should. Like that's great because I'm looking forward to season 2 and I just want them to continue having fun with it and give us stellar performances. And yeah, and I can't wait to see where they go.
We're gonna move on to just I just kind of wanted to reiterate what these episodes are all about on our platform. Obviously, we're recapping Heated Rivalry. It aligns with, you know, our podcast and aligns with us as far as like hockey and like queerness and things like that. And so this deep dive discussion is kind of in response to a comment that we've received over the last week that kind of stated that this person felt that there was no intention in the TV show or book about Asian representation, and the discourse that we're having around Asian representation in our episodes is overdone. So I just want to, first and foremost, want to say that we always welcome discourse and we appreciate every engagement and comment that's left on YouTube or, you know, audio platforms that you're listening to us on. So with that said, I think it's also important to note why we started this podcast for anyone who's just coming on here and, you know, interested in our Heated Rivalry episodes. We have been running this podcast this is our 4th season. We do have our regular podcasts that don't focus necessarily on anything related to Heated Rivalry. So I do want to say, you know, about in 2022, the Overglass Hockey Podcast was formed out of a conversation surrounding the lack of diversity within hockey, on the ice, in the stands, within media and podcast spaces. Furthermore, when conversations about diversity were happening, they were rarely being talked about through the voices of those diverse people. And as hockey fans, we wanted to do something about it. We started this podcast so we could be the representation we wanted to see. We talk about hockey, we raise awareness about representation in sport, and we invite diverse voices onto the show to engage with us, kind of just, you know, like we're doing right now with the Heated Rivalry episodes. So our discussions around the Heated Rivalry series aren't meant to exist in a vacuum, nor are our opinions meant to be taken as pure fact. We understand that this is based on a hockey romance novel, and that folks are allowed to live in that headspace, and other folks are also allowed to have the conversations that we're having. We believe that TV shows, film, and other forms of media are influenced by real world and lived experiences, and therefore are meant to invite further discourse. And we do feel that Jacob Tierney had every intention of doing that. This isn't to say that Shane, Ilya, Scott, Kip, and others are based on real people, but that it's a fact that hockey at the highest level of the game has yet to have an openly gay player, and the sport does have a diversity problem. So when Jacob said Asian representation would be part of Shane's story, he mentioned that it was always his intention to cast an actor who was half Asian. And I think Shane's story is about navigating being gay and Canadian Asian in hockey. And for the context of this show, I think the focus adds depth to the overarching plot. So in our first Heated Rivalry recording, I did share my story about how I got into hockey, and even at a young age, I noticed the lack of diversity, the lack of folks who looked like me. That's kind of relevant to the episode that we just finished recapping when Shane's talking to Rose. Yeah, that's kind of my experience too. I'm coming into the sport. I just want to play the sport. Obviously, I did not get to Shane's level of playing elite hockey, but I was in the same space where I didn't see very many Asian folks around me, but at the end of the day, I wanted to play the sport. I wanted to have fun. So flash forward many years later, and one of my beer league teams is predominantly made up of Asian folks. So nowadays, with the significant growth of the sport in this particular area, it's no longer so far-fetched. But I will share one more story about why it continues to matter so much. Several years back, I played in a tournament in the Netherlands. I was nowhere near the best player on the ice, but post-game, a teammate told me that someone was asking for me just outside the locker room. I knew no one in the Netherlands, so I hadn't a clue what this was all about. I stepped outside and was greeted by an Asian woman who was probably around my age at the time. She was the scorekeeper for the game. She expressed to me how happy it made her to see me on the ice, and then she asked if she could hug me. I was definitely overwhelmed and feeling incredibly humbled, but I knew exactly what she meant. I knew exactly what she was feeling, and so I obliged. And then, of course, I get back into the locker room. My teammates are going on about someone having a crush on me. I'm just a beer leaguer, but I made another Asian person's day in the Netherlands. So at the end of the day, we are all enjoying the show for all the happiness it's bringing us thus far. And these conversations about representation are very important and do matter. And I personally feel that we are not overdoing it. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Love it, Jay. So true. And I think at the end of the day as well, we're talking about our experience, right? We're filtering. You can't help but filter things through your own lens. And so whether that resonates with you, whether that's your lived experience or not, I think that we can all sort of accept that, like we're all taking what we can from it and trying to share that.
Right.
Yeah.
And like we mentioned earlier in the episode about the conversation with Shane and Rose and like him not being bullied for having a Western last name. If you're just like coming onto the podcast because you're interested in heated rivalry, like that's fine. But we're here to like also incorporate it with the experiences that we're seeing or witnessing in the actual NHL in hockey. There's not a lot of like POC in the league, and if there are, a lot of the times they're only half. They're half white and then half Filipino, half white, half Mexican. It's not like we're seeing a lot of different colors, like skin tones, it's very rare. It's a very, very white sport. And so it is going to be a very important topic for us to talk about, because it is one of the reasons why we started this podcast, because we are people of color that we don't see ourselves represented in the sport that we love so much. So if you don't like that, that's fine, but that's what we're about.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you've made it this far, we are so thankful that you are joining us on this journey. It would really be a huge, help and boost for our podcast if you wanted to leave a rating or a review on an audio platform to just boost our presence on wherever you're listening to us. And then, of course, as always, we love the discourse on YouTube. We love getting the different perspectives of how people are viewing the show. As I finished mentioning already, that, what we talk about here, we're not trying, we're not an official podcast for Heated Rivalry. We're not telling you exactly what you were supposed to feel while watching that show. And, to a certain degree, even if the director or the production team meant it to be a certain way, everybody's lived experience is so different, and that's the beauty of diversity. So, I mean, I'm going to have a different perspective of the way that I take in Shane's experience, and, not even particularly about him being, the Asian side of his experience, but then also other avenues, because there's so many layers of the show that it is, at the end of the day, yes, it is a hockey, romance. They, you want to see these two people together, but I think they're doing such a beautiful job of even really homing in on the different layerings, and then why adding that extra bit of complexity, and even chatting with a friend of mine who's yet to watch the show, but she tells me she's definitely going to check it out. She doesn't know anything about the, she hasn't read the entire book, but she has an idea of what happens. And she even talks about, at the end of the day, we only have these 6 episodes. Thankfully, we're going to have another season that they just announced. But even then, it's they're trying to tie in all this stuff into just 45-minute episodes. I mean, last week we had an hour, but even then I was is it really over? We have more time, right? But she even talks about how, we're trying to incorporate the homophobia in the sport, the, diversity issue, and even pointing out the fact that Ilya wears that Orthodox cross that gets me wondering about is that, even though he's so disconnected from everything that Russia is about in terms of he can't be out, he has all this pressure, but then you see the conflict that he wants to love his father and be loved by his father, and he's basically is never gonna get the ideal relationship with him. And I don't know if that cross is some way to just tie him to it's his way of still trying to hold on, because even in that scene before he goes back to Shane in the living room, you see him kind of mess with it a bit, and it's stories like that where I want to understand Ilya's his layering and complexity in his character. So I mean, yeah. At the end of the day,
and I think we might get some of that in the next episode.
Yeah. So I mean, all that to say, there's so much here. But if you just want to consume it between I just want to see Shane and Ilya, get together, and that's all you want to see, then hey, I'm not saying that's wrong, but our episodes are not going to be just about that. So if you want the type of content that we're giving out every week, yes, we're happy to have you. Please leave a rating, help us be found by other folks. And then if you also want to follow hockey, hey, we talk about hockey too on our regular episodes, so go check those out as well. So with that said,
this podcast is a great gateway drug.
It can be, yeah. Join us.
All
Join us in the torture.
Thank you so much for joining us. And oh my gosh, we have to wait how many more days for our poor boys to get hit over the head and come running back to each other because they are miserable, and I'm going to go to bed miserable just thinking, no.
I'm going to go watch all the cute parts and stop the episode before it gets sad.
Yeah.
The end. You're gonna end it when they're in bed. Oh, they just
Cuddling.
never got out of bed.
Oh, so cute.
All right.
Well, I can't wait to talk to you guys next week.
All right. Take care, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.